Hi everyone, my name is Shukri. I'm working for MetaMeta Anatolia. MetaMeta Anatolia is a SME based in Turkey. It's a Dutch-Turkish enterprise. I would like to welcome you all, and I would like to also welcome you on behalf of Prima MAGO project. It's funded by PrimaMed Foundation. We have project partners from 10 countries working on the water management and how can we bring solutions to the end users. I would like to thank you all on behalf of American University of Beirut. Today we have a guest speakers, Farah Kemaleddin and Rania Abu Said. Unfortunately, Dr. Rabi Mukhtar not able to join today. So in this meeting, we are going to talk about Azolla. Azolla is a very small aquatic fern that fixes nitrogen and used as a biofertilizer in agriculture, especially in the rice cultivation. Especially, it's quite common in Asia. In Asian countries, it's improved water quality, suppresses the weeds, and has ecological benefits. In Lebanon case, our colleagues from American University of Beirut, they used for purifying the wastewater. So in this meeting, we're gonna start with a very quick quiz on Slido. So we will share to you this link and also the code. And then we will start the presentation with Farah. So Farah, would you like to share QR code?
Yes, of course. So hello everyone. I'll start sharing my screen. First of all, I would like to thank you, Sukru, for the brief introduction and for introducing me as well. So I hope you can all see my screen. Okay.
Yes, it's
all right. So good morning or good afternoon to you all, depending from which part of the world you are joining us. And welcome to the second sharing series as part of the MAGO activities. MAGO, which is a project funded by the Prima program under the European Union, as introduced by Sukru. Today's webinar comes under the following title, Azolla Pinnata, a promising multi-purpose fern. And so to start with, first of all, what is Azolla? Azolla is classified as a floating aquatic plant or a fern, also known as a pteridophyte. The name Azolla comes from two words, azo, which means to dry, and alio, which means to kill. So the plant dies when it dries. So in other words, it lives exclusively in water, and it will die outside water. The plant is very tiny in size, with only 1.5 to 3 centimeter in length and 1 to 2 centimeter in breadth. However, the chemical composition of the plant is very interesting, and it makes it as a valuable type of animal feed because of the nutritive composition. Azolla is composed of 20 to 30% crude protein, 15 to 20% crude fiber, 2 to 5% fat or ether extract, 15 to 30% ash, and on top of that, it has low lignin. Low lignin, or even no lignin at all, is a very desirable property in animal feed because it improves the digestibility of the feed. So this combined with the high protein percentage makes Azolla a very valuable type of feed. As for the growing conditions for Azolla, the optimum temperature ranges between 20 to 28 degrees. It also depends on the species. It can go up to 32 degrees. The relative humidity, which is best for Azolla, is 65 to 80%, and the pH is 5 to 7.2. As for the water depths, as I said earlier, Azolla lives in water, but it doesn't require a very high water depth. Even it can survive in 10 centimeters of water and no more. So the preferable water depth is 10 to 30 centimeters. In terms of light, Azolla requires some shading. Therefore, usually we use at least 30% shade or 130 to 300 micromole of light that is entering the place where you are growing Azolla. Many farmers grow Azolla under the shade of a tree, for example, and this gives enough shade for the Azolla to grow properly. In terms of Azolla species, we have a total of 6 species. The most common two are Azolla folliculoides and Azolla pinnata. Okay, now moving on to the uses of Azolla. All right, we grow the Azolla on water and we harvest it, but what do we do with the harvest? What are the uses of Azolla? The most common use is a biofertilizer in rice cultivation, as mentioned earlier in the introduction by Sukru. It's very common use in Asia where they intercrop Azolla with rice because it fixes atmospheric nitrogen and enriches the water medium with more nitrogen, which gives a plus for the rice growing in water. The other use is it's used as a green manure. When harvested, some people spread the Azolla on the soil and mix it with the soil to give a sort of organic fertilization to the soil. Also, it's used as a feed supplement for both aquatic and terrestrial animals. For example, in many countries, it's used with tilapia fish in the same pond. The fish will eat the Azolla, and the Azolla will recycle the ammonium produced by the fish, thus forming a closed loop, where there are no wastes. It's also given for terrestrial animals, including cows, goats, and chicken. Now, responding to one of the questions that we asked in the beginning, Azolla is used as a mosquito repellent, and that was true. And the common name of Azolla is the mosquito fern because it's very popular in controlling mosquitoes. We all know that mosquitoes lay their eggs in water, in open water surfaces. And when you grow Azolla on an open water surface, the water surface will be clogged, and the mosquitoes will not be able to lay their eggs in the water. So you will have reduced population of mosquitoes. On top of that, Azolla is used for weed control, to control aquatic weeds in aquatic environments. And the harvest could be used for biogas, bio-oil, biochar, and ash production. It's also used in bioremediation and phytoremediation for recovery of nutrients, metals, and removal of pathogens. More details about phytoremediation will be shared in the coming slide, being the focus of our research. But first of all, we have to pause and ask ourselves, why Azolla? What makes Azolla so special? What makes Azolla such a unique fern? So there are basically three properties that make Azolla a very valuable plant. The first one is its nitrogen fixation ability, because Azolla lives in association with a nitrogen-fixing cyanobacterium called MetaMeta Anatolia. This was also one of the questions. So this bacterium helps the plant to fix atmospheric nitrogen. It supplies the plant with nitrogen, and it takes its feed also from the plant. It's a symbiotic relationship between the two. Thus, even when grown in water, sometimes many people don't add nitrogen fertilizers to Azolla because it can fix atmospheric nitrogen, and nitrogen is not a limiting factor for its growth. The second property, a desirable property, is its high biomass. Azolla is characterized by a very high relative growth rate, which can reach less than 2 days. So Azolla doubles its biomass in less than 2 days, and this is much higher than other terrestrial plants. And the third property is the ease of cultivation, because it only requires regular harvest and minimal maintenance to have the plant properly grow. In case you don't know, Azolla is a perennial plant, so you keep harvesting it as long as you can maintain proper conditions for its growth. Okay, moving on to the general features of Azolla. In this picture to the left, you can see Azolla as compared to other aquatic species or other aquatic plants. Azolla, as I said earlier, is a free-floating species. This plant, like any other free-floating plant, it can survive in turbid water, unlike other types of aquatic plant. If you can see, for example, small rosettes and small coalescents cannot survive in turbid waters, whereas Azolla can, because it lives on top of the water. It's not submerged inside the water, so it can tolerate low water transparency. In addition, it can tolerate fluctuations in temperature, seasonal fluctuations in temperature. So whenever you have it, and if you have in your country like different seasons, summer, winter, fall, Azolla will adapt to different temperatures and will be able to survive. Another property, which might be a negative side for Azolla, is that it requires high nutrient level in the water column. But this is, of course, this can be solved by supplying enough nutrients for the plant. Phosphorus is a limiting factor for the growth of Azolla. So if you don't have phosphorus in the medium, in the water column, the plant growth will be reduced. Now I move on to the case study from Lebanon, our case study at the American University of Beirut under the title of Efficiency of Azolla Pinnata in Purifying Treated Wastewater in Bekaa, Lebanon. We used Azolla in different types of treated wastewater, primary, secondary, and tertiary, as well as control types of water, which included fresh water, to test the ability of the plant in removing pollutants from water, and also to compare the growth of Azolla in different mediums. So the main motives behind this research are four facts, actually. The first one is water scarcity, which the whole world is suffering from. We all know that fresh water is a finite resource, and it is commonly exhausted by the overgrowing population and the shifting consumption patterns. So it is also estimated that 2/3 of the world's population live in areas that experience water scarcity at least 1 month a year. The second motive is the alarming levels of water pollution, especially resulting from increased loads of nitrogen and phosphorus, which are responsible for eutrophication of fresh waters. We know farmers sometimes over-apply fertilizers, and the excess fertilizers will leach down the ground and contaminate the groundwater. Similarly, in many countries, wastewater is not treated and it is discharged into rivers, thus causing increased pollution in those rivers and lakes. Therefore, this increased concentration of nitrogen and phosphorus, whether from agricultural runoff or from wastewater discharge, causes eutrophication of fresh water. Eutrophication is characterized by when you see the water surface turning green. This is what we call eutrophication of water, and this phenomenon results in algal blooms. It produces a lot of toxins in the water and reduces the oxygen available for the aquatic organisms, thus disrupting the life cycle of many aquatic species. In Lebanon, we have the Crown Reservoir, which is a major irrigation resource for farmers during the dry season, and this reservoir was found to be hypereutrophic because of the uncontrolled levels of pollution in the reservoir. The third fact is the high cost associated with the wastewater treatment, and also from the diseases and environmental issues that result from the discharge of untreated wastewater into the environment. And it is estimated that globally $100 billion and $104 billion are spent on water and wastewater infrastructure, respectively. The last motive is the inefficiency of centralized wastewater treatment plants in many parts of the world. We know that the major solution used for wastewater collection and treatment is huge or large-scale centralized wastewater treatment plants, and sometimes many households are not connected to these systems. Therefore, many people are thinking of decentralized wastewater treatment systems that serves smaller communities with a good efficiency in remediation of the polluted water. These systems represent only 20 to 50% of the cost of the conventional treatment plants. Therefore, we thought of this research where we use Azolla in a nature-based solution depending on a phenomenon called phytoremediation, to purify the polluted water. Phytoremediation is a remediation technique used to treat environmental pollution. It involves the use of plants, and it is made up of two words, phyto and remedium, which means restoring balance to a polluted environment. In other words, it describes the ability of plants to remove, uptake, or stabilize contaminants from a certain medium, could be soil, water, or air. In our case, we are using phytoremediation to decontaminate water from nutrient pollutants. Okay, for the methodology that we used, we ran a controlled experiment at AUB's Advancing Research and Enabling Community Center in Bekaa, Arik. Azolla Pinnata was grown in different types of water: a negative control, which had fresh water alone, a positive control, where we had fresh water with added nutrients, and primary, secondary, and tertiary treated wastewater. The experiment was replicated over 3 seasons, spring, summer, and fall, and we used a complete randomized design for the experiment. Here, I'd like to share some of the preliminary results specifically on the chemical properties of the water. You can see in the picture to the left, this is the primary treated wastewater that we used to get and grow the azolla on this water. The results you see to the right are for the primary treated wastewater only. We've seen that the nutrient removal efficiency is higher in nutrient-rich water. For example, the nutrient removal efficiency was higher in the primary treated wastewater because it had higher concentrations of nutrients. Therefore, we obtained 94% removal of ammonium, 91% removal of orthophosphate, 66% removal of potassium, and 76% decrease in the chemical oxygen demand, or the COD. The uptake of phosphorus was higher in solutions with lower ammonium concentration, as we observed, and sometimes we had low absorption rates at the beginning of the experiment, and this could be explained by the period required for the azolla to adapt to the new environment we are planting it in. And also we noted that the growth of azolla is reduced by low temperature and low solar radiation. For example, whenever the temperature went down or the solar radiation was less, and this happened in the fall season, we observed that the growth of azolla was reduced. Also, the reduction in COD, or the chemical oxygen demand, was accompanied by an increase in dissolved oxygen. And this is very important when we speak about aquatic environments, because dissolved oxygen is a critical factor for the survival of aquatic species. Many times when the dissolved oxygen is reduced to a critical level, a lot of species cannot make it and they will die. So this is it for the results that I'd like to share. And to wrap it off, I'd like to say that azolla, or the phytoremediation with azolla, was found to be an affordable, sustainable, and eco-friendly solution for wastewater management. Azolla was found to be efficient in the removal of nutrient pollutants from wastewater, specifically ammonium and orthophosphate, which are the major cause of the eutrophication of freshwater bodies. On the downside, phytoremediation can only be used on small-scale projects, which can take a decentralized waste management approach. Because azolla is invasive in nature, we cannot simply spread it in any river or any lake without control. It has to be controlled, or otherwise it will become a problem instead of being a solution to the problem. The second point that might be of interest to some of you, if you are looking for a research topic or anything to work on, in our case, we did not address the microbial contamination in the water, and the the nutritional value of the Azolla after harvest from wastewater. So further studies are needed to assess the potential of using Azolla biomass as animal feed, specifically by studying the microbial contamination, the heavy metal accumulation in the plant, and the nutritive value. In other words, my question is the plant or is the harvest of Azolla still usable, if still safe for animals to use after growing it on primary treated wastewater? So this is the question that I want to raise or open up for you. And I'd like to conclude by a few words that nature-based solution, not specifically Azolla, but nature-based solution, are a promising complementary solution for wastewater management, especially in countries that suffer from water scarcity and water pollution. They also contribute to circular economy by recovering nutrients and reusing the treated wastewater, as well as producing a protein-rich type of feed at the same time. For example, in case of Azolla, we treat the water, we reuse the treated wastewater, and we use the Azolla as animal feed. So this is a very promising solution, and it's time to stop looking at wastewater as a waste, but rather as a resource that we can benefit from. And that's it from my side. I would be happy to address your questions. And now I'll give the floor to Sukru if he wants to say anything before we start taking the questions.
Yeah, thank you so much, Farah. It's really fascinating to see the benefit of using the Azolla. One thing also I would like to raise, Azolla is covering the top, like the surface of the water, so it's not allowing the sunlight goes into the deep water. So it's a shading capacity is inhibiting the growth of the algae and other aquatic plants. So this is like how also the water quality is also increasing with the algal blooms. And
that's why we said it's used to control weeds, because it inhibits sunlight, so it blocks sun and provides proper shading. It can inhibit weeds and it inhibits algal growth, as you were saying.
And also this like nitrogen fixation is very important. This cyanobacteria, like they call it Anabena Azolla. So this is also very good for when you collect this Azolla from the wastewater treatment plant and apply on your field as a green manure. This is also very good because we are focusing on in Mediterranean countries, in Mediterranean context. Soil nutrition is very important. Wastewater treatment is very important. Still, untreated wastewater is ending up in the Mediterranean Sea or other freshwater bodies. I mean, it's excellent. So if anyone has question, you can switch off on your camera and unmute yourself and ask questions directly to Farah. We will be happy to respond. Yes, of course. You can also send the questions on the chat box if you find it better for you. Yeah, I think we have a few questions in the chat box. Yeah, you can start maybe with Nancy Kadenyi or the Anas. Yeah. Can you read the question, please, for me? Because how Azolla can be used in producing biogas? Is it a substrate or is used to increase biogas yield? I didn't understand what's meant by a substrate, but to my knowledge, no, not it's used because Azolla is because the biomass of Azolla is huge. Because they harvest Azolla every other day. For example, every 2 days they harvest Azolla, so they accumulate all the harvest to produce the biogas in anaerobic conditions. Yeah. So the questions. So we have two questions from Nancy Kadenyi. So the first question is, what is the nutrient removal efficiency of the Azolla? Does it help remove all the types of nutrients, organic, human, and industrial or bio-based towards some nutrients? And her second question, you mentioned it is planted in the rice fields. Does it now at the end behave like a wheat? Also, yes, it is improved biomass, but I feel it can make plants have high biomass, but the same plants can have less produce.
Okay, so for the first question, the nutrient removal efficiency is very high for all the nutrient pollutants that I mentioned, ammonium, phosphate, and potassium. The major two ones that are of concern to us are ammonium and phosphorus because they cause algal blooms in water bodies. And Azolla provides very good removal efficiency for both of them, more than 90% removal efficiency. Okay, so and for the other part of the question, saying about human and industrial pollution, when we speak about industrial pollution, we are mainly speaking about heavy metals in the water, and Azolla has also very high efficiency in the removal of heavy metals, especially iron, cadmium, and zinc. We did not study them in our case because in Lebanon we don't have a lot of industries and we don't have alarming levels of heavy metal pollution in the water. Our concern was nutrient pollutants because of the chaotic discharge of wastewater in water bodies and because of the agricultural runoff from nitrogen and phosphorus fertilizers. But yes, the plant is very efficient even for the heavy metals removal. As for the second question, and I like that question, you're asking if the plant when the plant is used in rice fields, whether it becomes a weed or not. There will not be competition between the Azolla and the rice. It will rather be a complementary type of environment because the rice would provide some shade for the Azolla. Azolla would provide nitrogen for the rice, so the rice will grow better and the Azolla will grow properly at the same time. And whenever you harvest the rice or you don't need the Azolla anymore, you can simply harvest it and keep the rice. So there's no competition between the two. They complement each other.
Yeah.
I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, by the way, you can also stop sharing your screen so you can go through the questions by yourself as well.
Yeah. I'm trying to, I can see a question.
I think this is all the questions. There are some comments. I also see Dr. Mehmet Ali Çullu is raising the hand. Hocam, if you have a question, please unmute yourself and ask your questions. Nancy, I guess, has a question. She raised her hand.
Yeah.
So, Nancy, please unmute yourself and ask your questions, please.
Shukru for organizing this wonderful webinar.
You're welcome.
I think my third question is more still on using Azolla in wastewater treatment. Currently, together with Water Quality Alliance from the UNEP, we are trying to see on how do we restore Nairobi River, which is really highly polluted, and the river passes in between the Nairobi city. So my question is, can one really plant, like for example, the way you would plant grasses or vetiver grass in steps, or how can we utilize Azolla to enhance the water quality of Nairobi River? How do we plant it or grow it, or what can we do to make sure we are utilizing the Azolla?
Thank you, Nancy, for your question. The Azolla can be used in your case for the decontamination of the Nairobi River, but not on a large scale where we spread the plant on the whole river. First of all, it depends if Azolla is native in your country or not. This would be the first question. And second, in my opinion, the best way that you can use Azolla is in decentralized wastewater treatment systems, where the villages that receive water from this river can have like ponds common ponds for the village, whereby they receive the wastewater to this pond, and you grow azolla over this pond for some time. You retain the water for some time, depending on the removal efficiency that you have for the pollutants. It can range between, you can keep it for 14 to 21 days. You can keep the water for this time. During this time, you grow the azolla on top of the water, and after that, you can use the water safely in your fields. Of course, it needs proper quality management, monitoring, consistent monitoring for the water to see the progress and how the plant is working in the conditions of Nairobi, the environmental conditions.
Great.
I hope I answered your question, Nancy.
Kubra has a question. Nancy, if you have any more question, please ask.
Yes, you really elaborated well. And then just a follow-up question came. As you know, like Kenya is almost 80% Azal. And when you talk of wastewater treatment, for example, I might plant this Azolla to do, yes, the wastewater treatment. Will it be good for domestic use, or it's you better for these other uses, for example, agriculture and livestock use? That is a bit of worry that I'm also having when it comes to the Kenyan context.
Yeah, it really depends on the standards and the standards you have in your country. For example, in every country, they have a standard for the treated wastewater reuse, whether in agriculture, in industries, or for domestic use. So you have to check the standards in your country, and if the water after treating, if the wastewater after treating it with Azolla, does it meet the standards for your country? Does it meet the requirements for your country to be able to reuse it for irrigation or for some industries or for the domestic use? If it does, then you can use it. The other way is that, for example, you can use Azolla as an advanced type of treatment. If you have a wastewater treatment plant in your country and you use Azolla after the tertiary treatment or after the secondary wastewater treatment, this gives more purification for the water and allows further use for the water. Or you could do it the other way around, where you use Azolla at the beginning and then you do further levels of treatment to make sure that the water is good for use. Now, most of the projects are really calling for the fit for purpose treatment. They call it fit for purpose treatment. So they treat the wastewater to a level that fits its use. For example, if they're going to use it for agriculture or for irrigation, it's different than using it for domestic, for households. So they treat it for a suitable level only.
Yeah. Thank you, Farah, and thank you, Nancy, for the questions. Isam has a question. Isam Bashur?
Yes.
Isam Bashur, you can unmute yourself and ask your questions, or you can also write your question on the chat board. And people also asking, Farah, can we get the presentation? Of course.
Yes.
We will also send an evaluation form. With the evaluation form, we will also send you this presentation. Also, we will upload this webinar on YouTube, so that later on you can go and check the video. Yeah.
Yeah. You can always go back to the YouTube channel of MAGO and check the video.
And Kubra has a question. Do we need to calculate the nitrogen content of Azolla when we apply it in the field?
We really don't calculate the nitrogen content of the Azolla. If you're interested in using Azolla as a fertilizer, you should calculate for the C/N ratio in the soil. So you don't want to make this ratio exceed the allowed level. And what we do for the Azolla is we test for the nitrogen in the plant, which is the total protein in the plant, and it usually ranges between 20% to 30%. In some cases, it can go up to 35% nitrogen in the plant.
Okay, so the next question is from Laurent Pouget. Thanks for your presentation. What are the next scientific steps in your study? Do you plan action for fostering the implementation of Azolla in Lebanon, collaboration with ministry like water managers?
Yeah, thank you for the question, Laurent. And as for the next scientific steps, we are currently working on finalizing the statistical analysis for the whole experiment that took 3 seasons, and we'll be publishing these results, of course, in a certain journal. It would be also of we're really calling for the adoption of Azolla as a nature-based solution in Lebanon, and many entrepreneurs, many farmers are very interested in Azolla. But the main use of Azolla in Lebanon is as animal feed. They use it as animal feed. They don't use it for wastewater treatment. So this is relatively new to Lebanon. It's used as for wastewater treatment. But since most strategies for the country are calling for decentralized wastewater management, I think it would be of interest to many funding organizations to utilize this plant in wastewater treatment projects.
Great. So another question from Christy Shuveli. Has any benefit in the economy if this starts as business or depend from the environmental conditions of a certain country?
Yes. Yeah, thank you, Christy, for your question. A lot of economical benefits actually for Azolla, because it works like in a closed loop, and it contributes a lot to circular economy. For example, if you use Azolla for wastewater treatment, you are treating wastewater from one side, you are reusing the treated wastewater in agriculture or other industries, and you are producing a nutrient, a protein-rich feed, a type of feed that is rich in proteins, which you can sell and benefit from the money that you get. So others, for example, use Azolla in fish farms or fish ponds, and the same scenario applies, where you have Azolla, it recycles the ammonium produced by the fish, and the fish eat the Azolla. So it's a closed cycle. There is not a lot of capital investment at the beginning, and not a lot of money, but a lot of profit on the long term, because it's a perennial plant at the end of the day.
Yeah, thank you, Farah. And the next question from Professor Mehmet Ali Çullu. Thanks, Farah. Is it possible to use Azolla like a fertilizer? Do you have any experiment? Can we use Azolla at the dry and warm climate? So he's mentioning about the semi-arid climate of the southeastern part of Turkey.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you can respond to the question.
Okay, for the first part of the question, it's used as a fertilizer. Definitely, it can be used as a fertilizer. We don't have any ourselves at AUB. We did not run an experiment on this aspect, but there are a lot of online sources that you can find which used Azolla as a fertilizer, and we need. If this Azolla is grown on wastewater, you need to check the properties of this Azolla, the microbial contamination, and the heavy metal accumulation in the Azolla, because as I told you earlier, Azolla also removes heavy metals from wastewater. So you don't want to use it as a fertilizer and then have high amount of heavy metals in your soil. So you need to make sure that the level of heavy metals can be tolerated. And for the second part of the question, it's used in dry and warm climates. Yes, and Azolla favors or loves dry and warm climates. You just
Indeed.
need to control for the light. You need to provide some shading, and that would be all you need.
Yeah, it's also from the wastewater treatment plant, the sludge also can be used as a fertilizer. But for this also we have a EU framework. There is the level of the heavy pollutants. So I guess we need to check before using it. Thank you, Hocam, for the question. And Christy has another question. Azolla is an invasive plant and can bring damage to habitats of the plants that are in that place, can bring the disappearance of native plants and ecological change. So she has a hesitation.
Thank you.
Yeah,
thank you, Christy. That's a very interesting question. And this was mentioned as a downside for Azolla because it's invasive in nature, and we don't want it to damage or disrupt the ecology of some aquatic environments. So what we do is we use it in decentralized small-scale projects whereby we don't have other species competing with Azolla. In case Azolla competes with other native plants and leads to their extinction, for example, then it's not the right place to use Azolla. But when speaking about wastewater, and wastewater usually we don't have native aquatic plants living in wastewater, so that's why we can use Azolla on that wastewater on a small scale, of course. Just that we keep that in control, and we don't want to allow Azolla to become invasive in our country and disrupt other aquatic species.
Yeah. Thank you, Christy, for the question. And Isam Bashir has a question. Thank you for the excellent presentation. You mentioned that Azolla absorbs ammonium well. What about nitrate, nitrogen?
True. Thank you for that question, and I wanted to also speak about it. I mentioned ammonium because ammonium is the major pollutant in primary treated wastewater. It has the highest concentration in primary treated wastewater. Nitrogen is usually low in the primary treated wastewater. Nitrate is usually higher at the outlet, which is the tertiary treated wastewater. Azolla is also efficient in removal of nitrate, but since the nitrate concentration is less from the beginning, so the efficiency in removal nitrate nitrogen is less. However, it does remove the nitrate nitrogen, and above all, the preferred source of nitrogen for Azolla is ammonium, not nitrate. Even when nitrate is present, the preferred source of nitrogen is ammonium, not nitrate. Yeah, I hope I answered the question.
If anyone has questions, it's really, the webinar is, I'm very happy. So a lot of questions are coming.
Yeah.
And we're trying to, actually, the Farah is trying to respond as much as she can. Like we have 5 minutes left. Do you have any more questions? In our region, we have more drainage canals and the irrigation areas occupied by the reeds. Azolla can use for the clean the wastewater of these canals?
Yeah, I can. Yeah, thank you for the question, Mehmet Ali. And you said that you have, if you want to use Azolla for in the drainage canals, if you mean that you have wastewater passing in these canals, then yes, you can use Azolla if it does not compete with the reeds. If you have reeds in the area, reeds are also efficient in nutrient removal, and maybe you can use the Azolla after the reed. After the water passes from this canal, you collect it in a certain pond and let it sit for some times, like 1 week or 2, whereby you grow Azolla on the water, and then you will be able to use the water for other purposes.
So I also have a question. So I know the area Professor Mehmet Ali is mentioning, it's a Harran Plain. It's one of the biggest irrigated plain in Turkey. We have salinity issue in the downstream. We have this drainage water due to the water scarcity in the downstream. the people are using this drainage water as a source of water. So and salinity level, EC level is high.
Yeah.
How about like using Azolla? Do you think it will reduce the EC level in the drainage?
Yeah. Yes, I got your question. Depends on really, it really depends on how much the AC is. If it's too high, like if it's too high, no plants can live in it. But Azolla can tolerate a significant number of EC. The Azolla, if you use it on that water, it can help reduce the EC with time. Depends on the evapotranspiration rate in that region as well. If it's too high, the reduction in EC would be less significant. But the plant does absorb potassium, does absorb ammonium and phosphorus and others as well, which I didn't speak about, but the plant also has requirements for calcium, for magnesium, for sodium. So it does absorb some of these elements, of course. But we need to check after growing Azolla, is the salinity level reduced to a level, to a certain number allowed in your country? This is the question. But of course, it will reduce the EC.
Yeah. Thanks so much. So we can. Thanks for the presentation. You mentioned that it multiplies rapidly. Are there any dangers that may arise if the presence of Azolla increases? Can we think of it like phosphorus pollution? Thank you, Ricky, for the question.
Thank you for the question. Yes, it does multiply rapidly in a matter of 2-3 days. But if you are growing the plant in a small scale project, in a small pond, small lake, where you can control the Azolla, you harvest it regularly, you maintain proper conditions for it, it won't become dangerous. I don't know what you meant by phosphorus pollution, but if you have phosphorus pollution, Azolla would be a great fit for you to reduce phosphorus pollution because it has high efficiency in the removal of orthophosphate.
Yeah, as you have shown on the presentation,
yes.
Nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, it's absorbed by the Azolla in the treated wastewater.
True.
If there is no any question, so we can get last question. Before leaving, I would like to ask everyone to switch on the camera, turn on your camera, and we can get a group photo. We will be happy to have a group photo all together. You're welcome, Hatice Hanım. And actually, thanks to this MAGO project, so we are showing this presentation, like this case study solutions that our colleagues are doing in Lebanon. Actually, this solution can be taken from here and apply in different places, in different level. And if you have any more questions, you can reach us by email to also our colleagues Rania Boussaid, Farah Kamaleddin, also to me, also Laurent Pouget, our project coordinator. I think so. Let's wait for other people also to switch on their camera.
And thank you, Sukru, for organizing today's webinar.
You're welcome.
Thank you, MetaMeta, for bringing all of us together today. Yeah. I had the pleasure to speak to you today.
Yeah, thank you.
I'd leave also my email in the chat box if anybody would like to communicate with me or have any questions for me. I would be happy to address.
Yeah, I also had my email address.